It seemed like he had a lot to say about Magic Johnson. And then I hear that you tweeted it goes even further than that. What did you mean by that?
He does. He has a lot to say about Magic Johnson, and clearly there's some thoughts he has about Magic Johnson. I think that a lot of people will be very surprised about. I was certainly surprised. Wasn't really even quite sure how to react to some of the things he said about Magic. No, I mean the reason he did the interview, and you know, when I had met with him, I simply was saying I think it's important for him to get for Donald Sterling to get his voice out there rather than be represented by V. Stiviano or any of these other people who have sold recordings, voice recordings of him, and so that's why he was willing to sit down and you know, apologize in the way that he has. It was a very long conversation. We spoke for an hour and probably 15 or 20 minutes. So there's you know, we obviously cover all the things there are to cover in this conversation. We're playing just a little clip of it, but it's. You know, I think it's going to certainly surprise a lot of people, some of the things he says.
Is it a coincidence that he and Shelley ended up giving their first interviews over the same weekend?
I do think it is. I mean, you know, a lot of people, some people might see some sort of, you know, strategic PR move in it. I don't know if he was aware that Shelley Sterling was giving an interview. I'm not sure how much communication that they actually have with each other. So. You know, it wouldn't. I mean, it's very possible he knew that she was going to say something, but you know, he'd been thinking about doing an interview for at least a week that I know of. I met with him a week ago, last Friday. So, to me, it seems more of a coincidence. You know, I thought, you know, we meet with Robin. You know this. You know, we interview a lot of people who have, you know, big media teams behind them, and a lot of, you know, who arrive with an entourage of PR people. Donald Sterling was basically him. There were one or two people at his house, but it was not sort of. I don't get the sense that there is a really well orchestrated plan here. I think he's very reactive to what's going on. I think to the situation that he finds himself in.
You know what? When I was sitting there listening to some of the sound bites that we're using today about the interview tonight, I was struck by how pleading, like his voice seemed kind of pitiful and woe is me. What was his demeanor like?
Look, he you know, he feels he's in this kind of uncharted territory. Certainly a situation which for him, I mean, look, he's been sued before. He's been accused of you know, housing discrimination before. But to have his voice recorded like this at his age, you know, he certainly, you know, there were moments of great emotion in this interview. He is clearly finds himself in uncharted waters, and you know, it's up for people to believe the level of sincerity, you know, of his apology, and that's totally up for viewers to decide.
So that's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. But if I were to see Anderson, say, at a cocktail party or something, and I would go, Anderson, what really stuck out to you the most during this interview? Are you willing to share that with us right now and our viewers?
You know, I think. I just think the range of topics. Look, he allowed us into his home. He invited us into his home and was willing to answer any question. You know, he very clearly wanted to apologize up front, and he spent a lot of time apologizing and apologizes in many different ways. And, you know, wanted to try to give a sense of who he is, where he comes from, what his background is.
Did you get any
but then
sense
was
about...
totally open to answering any question.
Okay. Did you get any sense about his mental health? And I asked that because in Shelley's interview, she seemed to allude to early dementia possibilities.
Right, early onset dementia. You know, look, I don't know him well enough to be able to point out, you know, something like that somebody who was, you know, a spouse of his would recognize, or an intimate friend of his. Certainly nothing that gave me any pause to actually sit down and talk with him or air what he has to say. He's a very smart guy who knows his way around a courtroom, who has spent a lot of time in court. He was a very successful attorney, as well as a real estate businessman, as well as, you know, obviously the team owner. So, you know, you know, it's not as if he forgot things he was talking about. If I actually moved on from a question, he would say, well, let's go back to this and let's answer this question first. And so, I mean, he's certainly very aware and very much in control of things.